heard some keywords like mentoring, social media, safe place. Those are all things that have come up in previous discussions. Is this information available to those who are here tonight, or may want to get access to all the programs you're talking about?
Sure. So we actually produce what's called the Community Resource Guide as well, and that is available as a hard copy, information on our website. If you go on gilbertand.gov and you look for community resources, we have different links to organizations and our nonprofits where you can find their program opportunities, how to get connected to things, what resources are available. So we try to make sure that this is available to all of our residents to make sure they know how to access different services.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you. We know you have to catch a plane, I guess.
I judge to pick somebody up.
Oh, you have to pick somebody up. Okay. Well, thank you. Going back to the agenda, which is item number 2, discussion on progress of action items. I have a list of things that we are currently working on that have been as a result of our previous meetings and just talking with people out in Gilbert. And some of these are being followed up on by the council members here, and I'll ask them to talk about them a little bit. But let me just tick off some of the things, just because I wanted to make sure that we all understand this is a working session, not just listening and not acting on the ideas and the ways that we can help address teen violence in our community. But you may be aware of these items that we already are working on, which is the brass knuckle bill, which is being worked on at the state legislature right now. We're heavily involved with that. The teen survey, and I'll ask Councilmember Bongiovanni to talk about that in just a minute. That's something that we're working on with the school districts also. You heard Melanie talking about parental support. That was a big issue in the last meeting, was discussion about parental support and how we can help parents. Teacher support was also a big item, and we are looking at possibly doing teacher surveys as well as student surveys so that they can let us know what their concerns are in the classroom and how we might be able to help them. Schools were discussed quite heavily, and we have taken that to heart, that the school districts need to be involved in whatever action we take, or we need to get them as partners. One thing that I am doing personally is something that came up in the previous meetings was our school resource officers and their relationship with teens. And I'm going to be doing a tour with Sergeant Rick Borum, which is our sergeant that's over the school resource officers in each of the schools. He and I are going to tour some of the schools and talk about some of the issues in those schools, as well as any resources that they may need to help them address this whole issue of teen violence. So I'm going to be doing that next week. And on a region-wide basis, there was a suggestion made that we form with our joining communities an East Valley safety group, youth safety group, which could include schools, our police, teams, parents, religious institutions, who could sit on a group similar to the East Valley Partnership, which is something that's done for businesses, where all the communities come together and talk about how we can benefit one another. We could do the same thing on a region-wide basis with our companion cities, and we're going to be following up on that. At this point, I'll ask our 2 council members if they want to report on some of the things that they've been doing.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We're working on the survey, and what came through the survey of our discussions were we wanted it done as fast as possible. And the way to do that is to work with the schools with a survey that they're already giving through the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission. It's called a Arizona Youth Survey, and I'm glad to see a lot of youth here today. And thank you guys for being here. It's given every 2 years, and it actually starts this month. So I've spoken to superintendents. I had one more meeting tomorrow to ask them to give us permission to have their data compared to the survey that we wanted to give, I think will be pretty comparable to the data that points that we're looking for. Again, it's administered 2 years, starting right now. The results to the public will be out in August. We believe we can get the results sooner than that due to the situation we have here. Reason for us using an AYS survey is it's a opt-out rather than an opt-in. When I met with the superintendents last week, they told me that if we did our own survey, parents would have to opt in. And I don't think we get the data that we're looking for with a smaller data set. So we'll be using the AYS survey that they give to public schools. Councilmember Torgerson's working to get some charter schools and private schools on board that also. It focuses on the overall field of safety, bullying, violence, substance abuse, gang involvement, delinquency, perception of harm, and victimization. And it can drill down the data to the schools, to zip codes, to regions, so we can get a better idea once we get the results of any movement we do after that. One second here. Survey not only evaluates delinquent and criminal activities by teens, but also victimization data, social influences, pressure, and risk and protective factor influences on youth. To give you some of the data from 2022 survey, 38.6% of students witnessed bullying in school, 25% missed school because they didn't feel it was safe to go to school that day, 25% had personally experienced bullying, 39.4% witnessed someone being punched, kicked, beaten, or choked, and 71% of teens turned down drug use in the past 30 days. And they reported that they did so because the parents would be disappointed. Which is a good thing. I remember, I never even had a beer until my dad died when I was 17. Because that was the number one reason. I knew he'd be disappointed. Not if he found out, he would just be disappointed. Me doing it, whether he found out or not. And those are some skills, some parental skills, and some support that we plan on working on in our workshops. I want to talk about our nobrasknuckles.org survey. Happy to report as of the minute I walked in the door, we have 1,300 people signing up for that. www.nobrasknuckles.org. Put in perspective, I have a personal goal here. When news got out that Bottled Blonde wanted to open up in the Heritage District, we had 4,500 people sign a petition. I think this is a lot more important than a bar. So please use your social media, tell your friends, let's get this thing past the finish line. Senator Kavanaugh did drop the bill this week. So we would appreciate as much support on that as we can possibly give. I met with some ex-gang members this week and some community leaders in the teenage world, shall we say, about putting together some workshops for parents. And what was interesting was their suggestion was to maybe start some of these workshops actually in the elementary schools before the kids get to junior high and high school. And that was really interesting. So that's one of the things that we will be scheduling, putting together as a package and scheduling some of those for parents. And when recently, probably about 5-10 years ago, I had a friend who was a single mom, and she had 2 teenage boys, and I basically adopted them, not literally, but figuratively. And they were good kids, but mom had a hard time making boundaries and sticking to them. And the kids just took advantage of that. And I saw real positive things happen to these 2 boys over the years that I've been working with. So I know firsthand what that looks like, what those programs could be. Again, either big brother, big sister, and also perhaps we can get some more of our men here to step up and be part of that program, and also women for the girls that have some issues. One thing I haven't started yet is businesses, but I need your help. I don't know, besides the one arcade, I don't know what businesses stop letting teens go in. supervision. So if you guys know any place, whether they be bowling alleys or whatever, please go to the town website and email me. I give you my email address, but we couldn't spell my last name. I couldn't tell I was 12. So go to the website. Please email me the name of those businesses so we can look at approaching them. And again, our hope would be that maybe they would charge a small fee and hire an off-duty police officer to be there for, make the kids feel a bit more supportive. Because I'd rather have them inside having fun than outside in the parking lots. Do I have anything else? One of the things that with the parental support group would be classes on social media, what to look for, and just really, really focusing more on, you know, have you talked to your kid today? You know, we all get busy, I know, but maybe just have something in your mind, just I'm gonna ask my kid every single day, and they will hopefully be able to build a better relationship with their parents in that situation. So that's all I have right now.
The state covered almost everything. The charter schools are actually excited to be part of this, so as that network grows out, they'll participate, so it won't be exclusive of that. The brass knuckles bill will be heard tomorrow in the Senate Judiciary Committee in the morning, so that's positive in that respect. So take a look at that in the morning, and not only talking about the community resources page, take the minute to do it, because it's something you'll probably forget by the time you get home if you don't start thinking about it now. But go and see if one of those resources is helpful to one kid you know. That's a start of making some of the resources that are already available work. Because if you forget that, you can't tell something about it.
Thank you. I was just looking at my list and something I forgot to mention to Councilmember Bongiovanni, since we're working on a brass knuckle bill, I know there have been suggestions made, and I know this one would be much harder to get through the legislature in some way, but some parents have suggested a bill to make parents responsible for the crimes of their minor children. That could be a difficult one, but something we could think about. I do know that a teacher mentioned that there was action that was taken in the classroom, and a minor can be taken out of the class if they're disruptive in some way. Making parents responsible for their minor children should be a no-brainer, but sometimes you have to use a little bit of a hammer for that. Those are the list of items that we're actively working on, and we keep adding to that list. When we hear from you and when we hear through emails and other sources that there are other things that can be done, that people that want to get involved, and we certainly welcome that. One thing that is also welcome is reports that we get from our police department each week. And I'm going to ask Chief Soelberg to give a summary of what's happening there. Those are what's happening in the department is part of the actionable items. And we're happy to report the things that are happening in the police department. Chief?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. Give you some high-level stats. We've been doing weekly briefings with media and trying to get the information out on the media, but our web team files webpage. We will continue to do that. If you haven't seen today, we made 3 additional arrests on 2 different cases.
that's the bad news, is there's so many of them. It kind of scares me in the community, and I'm sure it does you too. At this point, we want to hear from you. Again, this is a working session. We want to hear possible action items we can take to address this issue. Normally in a council meeting, we limit these comments to 3 minutes, but here, just be reasonable as you give comments and bring us some actionable types of items that we may be able to work on and address something that maybe you are aware of or would like us to be aware of. I've got 10 public comment cards, so we'll just go through those, that 10, and give them the opportunity to speak. First up is Ann Doucette.
I'm not sure which mic to speak in.
This is the that should be.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Ann Doucette. I've been in Gilbert for 26 years. And the foundation of any strong community lies in transparency and effective communication from its leaders. It's evident that the community is seeking transparency, and rightfully so. Transparency builds trust, it fosters accountability, and ensures that decisions are made with the best interests of everyone in mind. When a city receives accolades like the Safest City Award, it's essential to examine how those achievements are attained. If transparency was lacking and incidents weren't accurately reported, it raises questions about the integrity of the recognition. Did the city truly earn the title, or was it achieved through incomplete reporting, essentially gaming the system? Take, for example, the discrepancy in reported incidents at the In-N-Out area. When the Gilbert police chief stated in 4 years, there were only 8 calls, and 3 of those, a report was made. It painted a drastically different picture than the reality uncovered by investigative journalism. With 256 calls, including 79 of those teens were involved. The discrepancy is alarming. Where is the transparency in these numbers? As members of the community, we deserve accurate and honest information from our leaders. Transparency isn't just a buzzword. It's a fundamental principle that ensures accountability and trust. Moving forward, it's imperative that our leaders prioritize transparency and commit to open communication to maintain the integrity of our community. Thanks for letting me share.
They asked me to address some of the In-N-Out stats, and we were going to cover that a little bit more tomorrow. We do have, if you look at our teen violence webpage, we moved it to the top, so you can see a little bit better on the In-N-Out calls for service. What you'll see there is, out of all those calls for service, we break it down by month of type of calls. We broke it down by the number of calls total, the number of calls the PD initiated something proactive. We were there proactively watching, doing different details. Then we categorized calls based on involving a teen. Just because it involves a teen does not mean it was a crime. It could be, we had one case where a teenager was left by his parents. So that's categorized as a teen-related call. No crime was committed. We've had some where medical calls involving teens, not violent related. So in those, on that data sheet, it then breaks down, in addition to what is teen related, then you see what is non-teen related. And that's everything from a hit and run, someone was yelling in the drive-through. It could be, one was an employee that overheated in the summer at the In-N-Out. Some are medical calls, some are 911 hang-ups. So we broke that down intentionally to try to give you an accurate picture of what was actually happening at the In-N-Out. The 8 calls that were mentioned were 8 fight calls, not just 8 calls involving teens. We had 8 calls for service in 4 years in which it was reported that a fight was occurring in the parking lot. out of those 8 calls in which we responded to, in 5 of those incidents, everyone was gone when we got there. In the other 3, they were still there. We took a report and we made arrests that night on 2 of those. There are other calls for service where teens are hanging out in the parking lot. In some cases, we went, we spoke to them, they weren't doing anything wrong, and let them be. Other times, they were there and we asked them to move on. Part of it depends on the property owner of what they ask us to do. It's their property, but they ask us to have them move on, we will do so. Sometimes they ask us to trespass individuals if they're a repeat problem, and we do that based on their request. So we will talk a little bit more about that tomorrow when we do the briefing with the media, but we do have that summary so you can see each of the 4 years. We broke it down by month, plus we put the graphs so you can see. And what I hope you see is the fact that as, and keep in mind 2020 was a COVID year, so calls for service were down significantly everywhere. But as you look at the 21, 22, and 23 data, there were increases in calls for service in and out. But also pay attention to root cause. Because in some of those situations, we doubled the number of calls because we were there. We went from an average of, say, 2 times a month to 5 times. Each month's a little bit different. When you look at the November and December of 22, you see a spike not only in teen-related calls, but also a spike in us being proactive and being there and trying to ensure that it was a safe place to be. So I understand the story you're talking about. That information has been provided to the media. We'll provide more to the community tomorrow, and it is on our website if you want to look at that a little bit further.
Thank you, Chief. Next up is Lindsay Listall.
Is that okay there? So I know this is a working meeting. I don't know the solution, but I just want to tell you some examples that I've heard personally, specifically speaking of schools. So specifically happened to my child, threats of being jumped by a student. She had no idea who it was. And the school solution was to sit both girls down together and talk it out. A few weeks later, a student threatened to shoot up the school because he was upset with his ex-girlfriend. That student was moved to the other middle school in the district, and I saw him walking out of the school yesterday, and I asked my daughter, hey, is that student's back? She goes, yeah, he's been back this year. So you have kids threatening to shoot up the school, no repercussions, jumping kids, no repercussions. In the past 2 weeks, these are things that I've heard from other families. This is not what I've heard off social media. This is specifically, there's cases of revenge porn being going around between 15-year-olds and 17-year-olds. And the school saying just stay away from each other. There is kids selling Everclear and water bottles at ALA for $5 a bottle, going around school, still happening to this day. There's kids going on campus that don't have active student IDs and beating up other kids and then leaving. I don't know what the answer is or what the solution is, but when I was in school, and I know it was a long time ago, like you messed around and you found out, like you got in trouble. And I feel like the schools are taking this approach of like, let's talk it out. And in some cases, absolutely. If my daughter's pissed off because her boyfriend got stolen by another girl, talk it out. But if somebody's threatening violence, if somebody's threatening shooting, if there's being drugs sold at school, if they're vaping in the bathrooms during every period of class, my daughter says, yeah, you walk out and you're going to your next class and you smell weed throughout the entire school. And I know maybe it's a funding thing. I don't know the answer to that, but there's so much going on at school that should not be, and I don't know if there needs to be a zero tolerance for violence. I don't know where it comes from, but this is one kid in one school and what she's experienced in 18 months. So just to let you know what's going on, and if you guys could help alleviate it, it would be fantastic. Thank you.
One of the things I learned when I got elected was that we have no oversight over the schools. However, it doesn't mean we can't form relationships with them, work with them. That's what our hope is with this survey. My question to you is that maybe we need to go to the school board meetings and explain what you're seeing in the schools. I'm glad you told us now, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it. I wish we had more oversight, but we have zero oversight of our schools, but thank you.
One of the things that I mentioned on my list is I'm going out to actually tour some of the schools with the sergeant that's over the resource officers. I'm sure he'll have plenty of stories to tell about what's going on in the schools, and I hope to learn more about resources they may need to address some of those issues you're talking about. And, just get a
Is there
feel
a
for
way
that.
to get more resource officers? I know that's not a funding thing. Is there a way to get more resource officers? Because I believe at my daughter's middle school, there's 1,000 kids and there's one resource officer.
Yeah.
Like, how do we get a
That's
better
kind,
ratio?
that's kind of stuff we'll discuss.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's what we think.
yeah.
Next up is A.G. Jenkins, Ashi Jenkins.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to tell you all who Jameer Jenkins was to me. He was my cousin. He was my little brother. He was our family star. He's so missed to words couldn't describe. He was kind, he was funny, and he stood for principle. He was an athlete. It's taken a lot to do this.
Working for you.
Oh my gosh.
We're doing good. You're doing great.
It's nice to know that we're not all the way alone, but that does not bring back nobody's baby. Both of them boys' lives took too soon. Jameer, I taught him how to drive very illegally, but he learned how to drive, okay? And he was getting good, and he was working very diligently to get him a car, get insurance. I'm talking about the things that I talked to my little cousin about in life was to be a stand-up man, guy in society. I struggled with having those things because I didn't get that platform. But as a big cousin, low-key as a big sister, I made sure he did that. His mother made sure he did that, and he was working on getting that. Right as he was finna get that, it was taken from him. Thank you all for coming.
That took a lot of courage, and I think this illustrates this isn't just a local issue, this is a regional issue. I think that's pretty clear in these hearings that we've been having. Next up is Shanae Lavender.
Good evening, everybody. So Jameer, he was my son. It's been 2 months and 3 days since I last heard from my son's voice, touched and held him. I never imagined for this. What mother should? No mother should have to bury their child because of this heinous crime with no regards to human life. Many are left to grieve their lost ones. Who was Jameer to me? He was not only my son, but he was a scholar, an athlete. He also was starting his own business with dreams of helping others. Not to mention he was a twin. His twin was just up here. But he was a very smart, courageous, loving, loyal, funny, ambitious individual who came from a stable, well-rounded family and home. He wasn't a part of anything. He stood on what he felt was right and was very determined. He set out to accomplish many goals. While on earth for this short period of time, he achieved them all and more. He was very driven, very driven. So, as our message from the family, it's put your hands up and guns down. To many innocent people and lives that have been lost over these heinous crimes. Thank you.
That shirt that y'all see that his other cousin has, that's a part of his brand. It was called Most Hated. That's a part of the entrepreneurship that he was starting. One more thing.
He was on the back.
Can you guys read it out loud?
Yes.
Can I?
It is better to be hated for what you are than to be loved for something you're not.
Skeeter bite.
Thank you for being here. Alan Fitzgerald.
Well, good evening, guys. My name's Alan Fitzgerald. I've been a resident in Gilbert for over 40 years. I lived through the Devil Dogs. I don't know what learnings came out of that time period, but I hope they haven't been completely forgotten. I'm very happy to hear about the activity and the energy that's going into looking at the situation that we face today. My question is, are you resourced from the town to actually accomplish something, to actually get it done, and in a presentation on the website or in the next meeting that you have, it would be nice to see some statistics about the people that have gone through the program that Melanie spoke of tonight, the age groups, and how many people you plan to serve in that. I'm glad to hear that charter schools are included in the conversation about schools and not just district schools. I hope private schools get involved. It's across the board. They all need participation, and you all need resources. And that's money and time and town staff, besides Melanie Dykstra, okay? I'm very sorry for the loss of children. I buried a son, but it wasn't at the hand of murderous, violent teenagers. I can only imagine how that energy adds to the loss that these people are feeling. We need to stand up. Somehow, as we grew to a population approaching 300,000 people, did we really think we were going to avoid the statistic of this activity in our community? I don't care how wealthy or how educated we seem to be. I don't think we've looked into this so that we can be ready and prepared, proactive, not reactive, and that's what we are right now. I need the town to stand up, step up, resource, and make sure that this doesn't happen again as we get to 300,000 people. I understand as a regional. We were all teenagers. I don't know how involvement y'all had in that, but my high school wasn't the most peaceful place. It happens, and we have to press on that gas pedal. We can't do it reactively. It needs to be proactive. I'd like to see some justice for the victims. I walked in the vigil from the high school to the police station. Nobody from the town showed up. There was no town representation. This is the first time I've seen people show up that coalesced over an issue. It was impressive. It was very impressive. And I want to honor those people that showed up wearing orange t-shirts and signs expressing their concern over the death of Preston Lord. I just want to see this advanced in the town so we don't have this happen again. And if you would please present and discuss how you're being resourced and how you're going to have the ability to really get in front of this so we don't see this happen in the future. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. Teresa Arnold.
Hi. Sorry, it's going to be a little emotional again, but I'm the one who spoke about my daughter being sexually assaulted. I think the thing that I would love to see is for some of these girls in these schools to have more resources to know and understand, and not even girls, because it happens to guys too, but these kids need to have resources to be able to understand and identify the differences between what is and is not appropriate for and within a relationship, within a dating relationship. I will say personally, I am a single mom, and I have been a single mom for almost 10 years. And I have fought like crazy. I'm going from 6 in the morning until sometimes midnight at night, just so I can work and be there for my kids. And it has been heartbreaking as we have been around some of these teenagers in the schools. I will never forget one of the girls when we were at a competition sat and looked at me. As there was 8 to 10 kids there, and out of that group of kids, it was on a Saturday, only 2 parents showed up, and one of the girls looks at us and she goes, I wonder what it's like to have your parents love you enough to come at you, actually watch you compete. And that just ripped into my heart. And these are not kids coming from poor families. I mean, we're owning livestock, so it takes some money and time to go into all of that kind of stuff. And in how we've seen our schools handle this, I mean, the school board and the superintendent, I'm sure everybody hates me because they had so many emails coming in from me about everything that we were experiencing at the school. I even went up to the state board of education and I was told you need to handle it with the school board. And it feels like there's no, there isn't an option for us as parents when there are ongoing situations to get it put to a stop. Like we had multiple police reports that we tried to file, and they were over 3 different jurisdictions. And at one point, we would get told by an officer, sorry, we can't proceed with this, and then we'd have an officer in a different jurisdiction turn around and say, no, we would have absolutely prosecuted that. And so it has just felt like a mesh of, like, there's so many different opinions on how the law is interpreted, and we just kept hitting standstill after standstill after standstill. And because of that, the kid is still out there. And I will say, to a degree, my daughter was groomed. Like, there was a point where, like he pled, he fed her with everything to get her into a relationship with him, and then it just flipped. And it flipped quickly. And it has been really hard in hearing that boys are boys, and they have a drive, and we expect that from teens. And I think it's the same thing that, you know, we've kind of seen with some of these fights, and that, like, I'm an adult, I have to hold accountability for my actions. Kids who are breaking the law need to be held accountable. And I don't care if you're a teen boy and you have a drive, it doesn't give you the right to do the things that you've done. It needs to be pursued.
Thank you. We certainly are considering that issue also. I know that's part of this whole thing. And thank you for being here again. Next up, Bill Conley.
Wow. Just wow. I'm so sorry for what y'all are going through. I can only imagine. Well, I can't imagine how you guys must be. You know, we have been able to coalesce over here, but you guys have been kind of hanging out up there by yourself. And I know I speak for everybody that we got you. You are absolutely included. And as we move forward, we will all find ways to include you in our efforts. All right, a little emotional, that's for sure. Chief, I'll get with you in a moment, sir. You, boy, you really set me off one more time. Thank you for hosting this event. I have to tell you, I've attended 2 city council meetings in my life. The first one was Gilbert on Tuesday. The next one was Chandler on Thursday. I could not believe, I don't think any of us could believe the difference in the 2 town councils and the mayor. I think everyone will tell you it was, I don't even know what the words are. I didn't even know that was possible. How is it that two city councils that are next to each other can operate that differently. I'm not going to give you much actionable this evening because there's been such an absence of leadership. And in the vacuum of no leadership or no communication, starting with the chief and the mayor, we've had to fill in the blanks. It's taken the community come together and fill in the blanks and fill that vacuum that existed and exists today. While I'm thinking of it, thank you to the media. I'm beginning to recognize a lot of you now are becoming old friends. Bianca, right? Thank you guys. This is very important. And you guys all recognize, right? Yeah. You guys have all said that you recognize how important this is to our community. And it's not just Gilbert. It's the East Valley. We've tried to think of a name for our cause in juxtaposition to the Gilbert Goons, which is so stupid, right? So we thought of East Valley Angels because we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do good. And East Valley Angels is a little bit more inclusive because you can see this is Mesa, it's Chandler, it's Gilbert, it's Queen Creek. It's this whole area. So back to the city council differences. The first thing I noticed was the first thing I noticed among many was there were memorial to Preston Lord all over the place. Our little candles for Preston were everywhere, on every person's desk up front. Every person, starting with the mayor, had some sort of orange they were wearing, whether it's an orange bow tie. The minute we came in, we felt respected. We felt heard right off the bat. First thing I noticed was they started the meeting with the tip hotline. Hey, big screen here, big screen here. Here's the tip hotline. Write it down. This is important. Well, guess what? We talked about our tip hotline, and the mayor wasn't even aware that we had one. I believe what she said was, "Oh wow, I didn't even know we had one." Well, that's pretty clueless, but that's really no surprise. The next thing I noticed was the police chief, right? Obviously, you're very uncomfortable. And this is a very uncomfortable situation, okay? People communicate in different ways, and I don't expect you to show any emotions. I guess I would hope that you would show some empathy, but either you're unwilling or unable to do that. Accept it. When you gave your speech, you were reading off a piece of paper. I understand why you want to have a statement, but you couldn't even read off of that without stumbling around. You showed no emotion whatsoever. You were just dead behind the eyes, reading off your statement that you couldn't even get through. At the Chandler City Council, their police chief was in role for what? 1 day. 1 day. She had a prepared speech. She didn't stumble over hers. She showed empathy. She spoke from the heart. And we're really missing that. Okay? So, Chief, I'm just going to tell you straight up. You know what? Similar to the mayor, there's a bunch of double talk. Okay? All the statistics, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. We won't do this. We won't do that. You know what? I mean, everything you were saying to try to justify what your team did and didn't do is a bunch of crap. Okay? It's not you, it's not the mayor, who will protect the East Valley? Who will look at this from a big picture point of view? We know what's going on at In-N-Out Burger, okay? Well, we went over there and one guy was a teenager and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, give me a break. Is there anybody that can look over this community with some leadership and with a heart instead of making excuses for the statistics? I don't know what you're bonused on. Maybe it's your numbers. I don't really know. But I think everyone would agree. What can you do, not what can't you do? There was an incident at In-N-Out, and you're welcome to challenge this if you prefer. A young man was beaten up. He pulled through the drive-thru. He was surrounded by teens, right? I hate to even say, I don't even know what to call them. But he was pulled out of his vehicle. He was beaten. brass knuckles, stomped on as he lay in the floor prone in a fetal position. He was able to get up and drive himself across the street to Dick's Sporting Goods, where he felt safe. He called his dad. He called 911. Gilbert police showed up really quickly. Everybody was still there. And what do you know? Oh, wow, we have a priority domestic violence call. We'll be back. And guess what? When they came back 45 minutes later, everyone was gone, so they couldn't do anything. I could not be more disappointed in your leadership, okay? And I'm not the only one speaking to this. I live right down the street. Last thing I want to do is piss off the police chief. But man, somebody needs to say something at some point, right?
Did you have some comments on teen violence?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I'll tell you this. I did not know Preston or his family. My daughter attends high school in Gilbert. She's 16 years old, like Preston. She's a scholar, like Preston. And the driver of the getaway vehicle in the murder is in her history class. Okay? I know you must know. I know you must know. Initials are BL. Okay? Right? Dispute anything you choose. But like I say, in the absence of communication or leadership, we fill in the blanks. So I'll save teen violence. I'm scared. I'm a concerned dad. We're scared. And the solution here is a multi-layered issue. It's going to take going at this from all angles. Lack of parenting, well, guess what? We can't control that. Social media, really can't control that either. What can we do? We can have a higher police presence, right? So I'll just close with this. Thank you for your time. I look forward to attending the next one, and I sure hope if there's some way, maybe this is actionable, is there a way for our city council to look at how they do at Chandler and try to mirror some of those best behaviors and best practices? Because we can really use them over here. Thank you.
I want us to put ourselves in a different situation. Put yourself in a situation when you're a police officer. We don't know what was on their mind when the police called us on the radio. We don't imagine, I can imagine their adrenaline was up, ready to get in there and solve the problem. How do you think they felt when it showed up when no one was there? Because that happened a number of times in the in and out. How do you think they felt when they got there and a victim doesn't want to press charges or talk about it? How does that police officer feel? What happens when they show up and the witnesses don't want to cooperate? What are they saying to themselves? What is wrong with these people? Why don't they want to cooperate with this kid? Why don't they cooperate? You know, it's easy to say, play Monday morning quarterback. Let me tell you something. What happens is maybe we weren't there with the police at that time, but where we were, when the police asked for help, we were there. Everyone in this room gave tips. Everyone in this room sent pictures. Everyone in this room said, I think I know who this kid is. And we as a community have gotten 20-something arrests. I don't want to compare us against other cities, but you're sitting in here, in this room tonight with us. And I just want to say that I want to talk about us as a community, to solve this as a community, because it's really easy to not talk about us working together and just throwing barbs out. And I'm not saying that's what you did, sir, at all. I'm not saying
I want to interrupt you, sir.
In general,
I apologize.
In general, the last 3 months, I've just been hearing police are, they're in bed with this church, or this is a conspiracy theory of the week. And I honestly just have to say, I want to hear from everybody. But together to solve this like we have been doing. 20-something arrests. That's phenomenal so far. And you can say anything you want about, you know, they weren't there, they didn't catch them the first time. Maybe there was no one there to catch. Maybe they didn't have the witnesses there. Maybe they didn't have the person who was assaulted to say, I want to stand up. You know what? Because of all of you in the community, those kids got the strength to say, this was what happened to me, and this is who did it. And so I'd rather focus on us as a community to solve the problem, because that's where we need to move together on this. So, sorry.
Thank you. I think the old adage is see something, say something. That's what I think Chuck was talking about. Angela Rogers? Hold on, Angela, just a second.
I want to say there's one thing that's probably wholly unfair, and it's, I'm a fan of the mayor, but the mayor and the chief have been accused of lacking empathy. They're both parents. And your anger is understandable, but don't discount the humanity of the people that you're looking at. That's wholly unfair. I think that's beneath you. And the fact that, in my opinion, that our digital department, our communications department did fail the police chief and the mayor, and didn't let them push something forward to show engagement, to show that they cared. But I don't believe either of them lack the empathy for a child that's been murdered in Queen Creek. And there's 20-something arrests this year. When Queen Creek has its 7 arrests, whenever the county attorney can make sure that's wrong, so let them not jump the gun. And a lot of these kids are kids of means, so they'll probably hire people to look for the slightest little inconsistency in arrest, or say they were knee-jerk reacted. There was a knee-jerk reaction, they had to arrest someone and built the case after. It's not that you be patient and have the process, because patience doesn't replace a child. Patience only will ensure that hopefully these kids do face the harshest justice they can. But I would really hope that we cannot make this a personal thing, because everybody in this room cares about kids, every single person. And there's no reason, you never get the best results by putting anyone on the defensive. You get the best results by engaging them, giving them tips, giving them things maybe they don't know. Hugging a woman who lost her son. That's going to get a lot better results than what I just heard.
May I just say, listen, that wasn't my intention. This is emotionally charged, obviously. I didn't want to come across as being completely angry, but yes, I am, okay? There's a root cause here, all right. I do not know what the chief or the mayor holds in their heart. I have no idea. All I see is what we observe. What other choice do we have but what we observe? Chief, you know what? I apologize to you. You know what? I just know the way that I see people. That's the way it comes across to us, okay? I am deeply sorry for going that direction. I do not want this to be an anger fest here. I want it to be a love fest here. And I just felt like I had no choice. I just felt like I would be remiss if I didn't compare the two city councils, right? So I know it's about us. I realize that. But it's also about our neighbors in the other towns. And they have some best practices that maybe that could help us as well. And so I just want everybody to forgive me if it turned into that. Well, according to these guys, I did, right? So, and you guys were so impressive at the city council meeting. You guys were the light of that meeting. And now I've got you guys disappointed in me. And I apologize, because I came here knowing that you were going to be a light, and now I've pissed you guys off, right? So that's all I know.
Worry about us.
yes, I'm a little angry. I told you. The driver of the getaway car is in my daughter's history class. So,
Would you talk to one of the officers about that a little bit on the side? Maybe it's information they don't have.
yeah, they have. Yeah, the mother of the offspring admitted as such. So, anyway, I'm sorry, guys. I'm feeling really fine. Well, I am sorry because I feel like I'm responsible for putting this down the wrong path.
But you did nothing wrong. If there's people in
But
positions,
again, these three guys. Anyway, I'll shut up.
We're good.
We need to get to Angela. Angela Rogers.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. My name is Angela Rogers. Online, you know me as part of Lily Waterfield. So I'm here because of the teen on teen violence. Every day in every community, our teens are faced this hidden battle against the violence, and we talk about it, but my biggest question I think we need to start asking as we start to find solutions is, where does the angry kid go to release his anger in a safe environment so he doesn't end up going to a social event like a party and uncontrollably loses his anger? I'd really love to hear solutions and ideas around that. Teen on teen violence is not just the physical altercations either. We often hear about it, and it encompasses verbal abuse, social exclusion, and increasingly cyberbullying. The repercussions are profound, from immediate physical injuries to long-lasting psychological trauma, affecting not just the victims, but also the perpetrators and witnesses, and leading to a cycle of violence that can persist through generations. But what drives our use to such extremes? The roots are complex, intertwining factors like familiar discord, the relentless pressure of social media, the desperate need for acceptance, and an underdeveloped capacity for emotional regulation. This undeveloped capacity for emotional regulation does go hand in hand with what I'm talking about, these children learning to manage and express their anger in a proper and effective way. Some ideas that I've written down. Counseling and mental health support. This needs to start at an elementary level. Our children are becoming teens that don't know how to resolve conflict peacefully and effectively. And that starts really at the elementary years. We say this all the time. I was taught this as a young mother. What you want your children to know about at 13, you need to start talking to them about it at 8. So that's what our school systems should be gearing towards too. What is the 13-year-old going to be dealing with? What are the challenges he's going to be facing with social media? And we need to start putting those learning mechanisms in place for an 8-year-old, for a 4-year-old. And I know that seems very young, but it does start at that age. I'm a mother of a 19-year-old, I'm a mother of a 16-year-old, and a mother of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I could see the difference. And that was an accident. I went on a cruise. So they're not accidents, so if they ever hear this. But I see the difference, and that's why I'm here to give some suggestions on what I think maybe our kids do need to start learning. I say 8, but honestly, my 4-year-old I have to start teaching him safe practices online now. And he's 4, but it starts now at 4 because he's going to be facing those things at 8, and he's going to face them at 13 and 15, and it all starts, these little microbursts, at 4. Family intervention programs. We don't have a lot of those resources, I think, in Gilbert, especially the border of Southeast Gilbert and Queen Creek. We have grown tremendously, and more of those resources as more families are becoming split households is another outlet that we could help our youth navigate. It's a complicated thing. My children are from a split household as well, my older ones, and we have tried to navigate it, and it's hard, it's difficult. So I can understand, again, how these teens turn to violence when you don't have the proper education. Community engagement. I think police departments could get more involved from a young age so that our children know that you guys are a safe place. Unfortunately, I have a police officer in my family, and I try to talk very well with police officers and firefighters and their place to go to for safety, but my teenagers don't see that. And it's not from me, that's from what they're being raised on. And why is that? Why are the police not involved enough with teenagers to be like, I am here for you. I'm a safe place. My teenagers don't have anybody besides me as a safe place, and that's a failure on our community. They should have teachers, principals, and somebody that they can go to. I don't want to be the only one that they can go to. I want them to have a community. Access to hotline and online resources and restorative justice programs, I think, are some other ideas that I thought we could try to implement as well that I hadn't heard. Anyways, to wrap it up, we stand at a crossroads, and I think that together we can come up with some ideas. But like I said, I just wanted to bring some awareness that hasn't been touched on, and that's the anger that really does concern me and scare me for our youth. And I haven't yet seen anybody really touch on the topic of how we stop it, how we help it at a young age, and I would really love to be a part of that. So I'm here and open for suggestions and ideas from you guys and from the community. But again, I do see that being one of the bigger things. Anger breeds a lot. I mean, if you watch Star Wars, you watch what Yoda told you, you know. Anger leads to all kinds of things, and he's wise for his age. So thank you.
You mentioned social media. Of course, we can't stop social media, but I wanted to comment. Today I listened to like an hour and a half subcommittee meeting from Congress. It was a bipartisan group of senators, and what I left with, every single social media CEO was there. And what I left with was that children and teens aren't their clients, they're their products. And hopefully we can change some of our representatives, maybe hopefully they're pushing a bill where social media companies can be financially responsible for things that happen on their websites or on their networks for kids. I really hope that goes forward and passes.
Christine Brennan.
Hi. It's my understanding that there are more people that want to talk that are actually being a little silent, so I'm going to allow them to come up and speak. Jill? Is there a Jill that wants to come up and speak, please?
Actually, that's our prerogative.
Then she can take my place. I have a lot to say, but there are people that want to speak, and I would not silence them, Scott.
Well, I'm not going to silence anybody, but...
Come on up. I appreciate your prerogative, but it's our community, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's two others besides me. We were, I think, 1 minute late walking in. My name's Suzanne Mossy. I'm a resident here in Gilbert. I have two daughters, one in the elementary school system, public school system, and one in high school. And while I understand that you don't oversee the school boards, I strongly believe that to begin the road of solutions, our school systems must be involved. Our superintendents, teachers, and principals should be here in this meeting tonight and at all meetings. They spend so much time with our children and have a deep understanding for what's going on. And I do believe that teachers feel that their hands have been tied
when it comes to discipline and accountability, and they need to have their voices heard. My daughter's elementary school, Bridges Elementary, she's had 2 teachers this year depart her classroom. The first teacher left within the first 6 to 8 weeks of the class, in tears, packing up her bag in front of the classroom, telling these children that she's had enough, and if they don't want to be here, they should follow her out. She walked out of the classroom, down the hall, and never returned. My daughter came home in tears, asking me why her teacher had left, and I had no answer because I hadn't been alerted. The second teacher, he must have been a very good teacher from 3rd grade, came into the classroom. My daughter was very happy with him. He seemed to have a stern hand, and the class was in order. He departed because a vicious rumor started in the school system and the community about him and the students, which must have been unfounded because he now moved over to district. So in this school year, after the teacher had left, and these other teachers, the kids who are constant disruptors began laughing and feeling like they're winners. I asked my daughter, is there any accountability in the classroom? And her answer to me was no. I don't know as a parent of an elementary school student what I'm supposed to say to her. In high school, my daughter goes to the local high school here at Highland, and they have a policy that you don't even need to show up to class or make any effort in your assignments, and you get an automatic 50%. This makes me wonder if this is why we have an A grade rating. All we're asking these kids is for 10% effort to get out of the school system. They know what they need to do and the assignments or tests that they need to pass in order to get through. We need to be setting these kids up for success in their next step, and we need to treat them like they're the smart, intelligent individuals that they are. And I feel we need trained folks in mental health, conflict resolution, and nonverbal cues to walk the halls of our schools, go into the restrooms, and be visual, not in an office. Yes. Mr. Anderson, I think it's great that you're going to meet with the head of the resource folks on office, or the resource officers, but I think it's going to be more effective if you don't tell them that you're coming. Unannounced, walk through the halls and experience what our children have to experience on a daily basis in the school system, from elementary, middle, and high school. You've given them opportunity to correct themselves and put on a show for you by announcing you're coming. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for the comments, and you're right, the school board should be here. My question, I guess, would be, have you made that same presentation to the school board?
I plan to at their next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. You good? Suzanne, sorry. Thank you, Suzanne. You're breaking up.
I am.
You're staticky.
When I reach back out to the school superintendents, I will follow through to see if we will be allowed to do a teacher survey also. I think that's important.
And I do want to point out that Anna is here from, England, correct? From English. So, it's not all from where? From English School District. Just put your hand up here.
Higley Unified, and also Chad Thompson from Gilbert.
Okay, I couldn't. Yes. My X-ray vision's gone.
Thanks for being here, both of you.
So you all, I'm Chris Brennan. So my goal today is just to talk a little bit different of what everyone's been talking about. So my goal, and the goal of actually those in my group, I am part of Lily Waterfield, as you all probably know by now. It's to highlight, I want to make sure you hear me. It's to highlight what we've actually started calling a community desert. Much like food deserts, where low-income communities lack access to high-quality food. High-income communities have poor community involvement and culture, poor social networks, and poor awareness of what's going on in our community and with their kids, as exhibited in the last couple of years here. Because we live in affluent areas, we drive everywhere, we DoorDash our food, and rarely stop to talk, to actually just talk to people. For our children, the only interaction that they have with others is at school. Some have a few neighborhood kids to hang out with, and some are lucky enough to have sports or even paid for activities. But those really are few and far between. And the goal of those, it's not to be social, it's actually to achieve something. And so we live in the community desert where our kids grow up isolated from each other, where they go to a party and of course it gets out of control. There's nothing else to do, and as we've heard, they all show up at these parties in massive carloads. We hear hundreds of kids they're going to one party. We need more social activities for our kids, and quite honestly, for us grown-ups too. We don't have a rec center in South Gilbert. We don't have a YMCA. We don't have a Boys and Girls Club. And all of our parks are in HOAs that actually get mad if teenagers are hanging out there too long. We need businesses that breed social interactions to be set up. But most of all, we need our government to build out community engagement centers so that we can have social interactions and social networks, and to keep those costs low. As we gain more of that social interaction, we will gain more awareness of our community and what our kids are doing. And then they'll begin to feel a better sense of community and what it's like and want to belong to it and no longer hurt it. So, and I just want to add one more thing, and I apologize, Scott, but I'm just putting it out there. Is there anybody else that has been rejected to speak? We have 3 or 4 people. I think we should allow people to speak.
I'm not going to hold back on letting anybody.
Thank you. Do you want them to fill out a card?
Oh,
Yeah. See?
I filled one.
Before you speak, I see kids in the room. If you guys want to speak, please do. You're not going to hear you also. Teenagers.
First of all, I want to apologize. I'm kind of new to this, kind of figure out what I was going to say, and I totally forgot to fill out a card. But I appreciate it. First of all, Gilbert Police, thank you for doing all the arrests you possibly could. A little bit about myself. My name is Mark Jacobo, born and raised in Maryville. Decided to move to the East Valley right out of high school to get away from the gangs, to get away from all my surroundings, to hopefully find a person, create a family, live happily, with not worrying about what they're dealing with over there on a daily basis. So I had 3 kids. Mother of my kids is over there, Alma Antolin. Raised our kids very respectfully. Till this day, definitely old school chivalry, open doors for anybody, pull out their chairs for their girlfriends, till this day. But in 2022, I lost my youngest on his 18th birthday to gun violence in Mesa. The reason why I thank you guys for making all those arrests, doesn't sound with very minimal errors. Unfortunately, it took Mesa police to rewrite a police report, not once, 3 times. City of Mesa, social media, I personally knew who did it the day I showed up to my son's where I had to identify him. So for them to take a year and a couple months to fix their mistakes, to not only arrest Joe Rim once, to arrest him twice, and thanking you for you guys to the city of Gilbert to raise awareness, to kind of light the fire under Mesa, to have the chief of police make a very disturbing TikTok a month ago saying, you know, he's not messing around. Juveniles want to hurt juveniles in our city. We are holding them accountable. We are creating reports daily, making arrests daily. Me and the boy's mom literally just got done with a meeting and had to see this, and it's like, you know, this is BS. You know, how are you making reports daily when you can't even give my son his justice as he deserves? It takes a year. So going through all of this, a little bit about my son. He was intelligent, not only as my kid. Everybody talks highly of their kids. It took me and his mom to lose our son to really know how much he impacted everybody. He was intelligent. He was an honor roll student since kindergarten, loved music, loved baseball. He wanted to be a producer. He had a talent, a photographic talent, where he could listen to a song, listen to a commercial, even at the age of 3. The second time he remembered that commercial, he was singing it already. He sung Spanish music like he knew Spanish, didn't know a lick of it, but he made it sound like he knew what he was doing. But unfortunately, November 6, 2022, he went out for his 18th birthday. And again, the son that I have, he's a peacemaker. And doesn't matter, again, he went to a function where it's an old high school friend in Gilbert. He used to go to Gilbert, then we moved to Mesa. So it was a function out there, or actually it was in Mesa, but a lot of Gilbert people. Joe Rim showed up showing his gun, and my son happened to ask, hey, why do you have that? Kind of put him out there. And pretty much, you know, he was protecting the people in his surroundings. Like, you don't need to have that here. We all know everybody, we're having a good time. So literally Joe Rim just happens to ask, oh, you want to see it? My son's like, yeah, like not thinking anything. Just shoots him point blank. Not only does he leave the scene, he shows up minutes later after everybody's gone to retrieve the casing. And it still takes them a year and some months to put this guy behind bars. Again, I thank you guys again for raising the awareness throughout the state to finally have Mesa put Joe Rim behind bars, finally, for second-degree murder. But, you know, all I ask is everybody makes mistakes. Everybody handles things different. You know, as the gentleman approached you, not showing feelings. I'm not a person that shows feelings either, but I'm torn for the rest of my life. You know, with that being said, the type of son my son is, till this day, he shares his love. It took me to just realize all this pain to know that my son impacted teachers, students that literally only met once, that changed their life. He was that kid that if anybody was sitting by themselves at school, being bullied, a girl having an emotional day, he was just sitting there singing them songs, rapping to them, talking about shoes. They still come visit him on my mantle till this day. I'm a person that is not approachable. You know, I own my own business. After I'm done with the day, I don't like dealing with people. But something had to be done. Me and our family decided to put a foundation together, the Stephen Benito Jacobo Foundation, Gun Violence Against Our Juveniles. Our mission is to educate, bring awareness to our city, hopefully across the world, and support. You know, that pain will never go away. But one thing that helped me is I had family that gone through what I gone through. Hearing anybody else, hey, I'm sorry, you really don't feel that. But when you feel somebody else's pain, it's very comforting. You could really take that love from that person. So we want to be there for other families that are going through what we're going through. It's never going to go away. But one thing that I've noticed is doesn't matter what you put in place. There's always going to be violence. Like you guys said, we can't control social media. It starts with the parenting. I was that parent that my kids always played outside, so their mom could clean house. You know, that was the rule. Get out of here so I could clean house. I have a plumbing company. I go through all these cities around here. I don't see kids play outside no more. I don't. You guys, we pay all this money to have, you know, neighborhood parks. You don't see kids outside. You know, it's like there's not a book on parenting. I'm a great parent. I'm pretty sure everybody else in here is. But there's a lot of parents that work a lot. There's a lot of parents that, you know, the way the economy is, have to work 2 jobs, you know, or single families. But it just takes a second to just ask how your kid's doing. It just takes a second. Till this day, I have 2 of my older 2 kids stay with me. They pay rent, but they also keep their door open. If you don't like my rules, you go pay rent somewhere else. But I want to know what's going on in my house. You know, there's so much leverage for kids nowadays where as long as they have a phone in their hand and they're quiet, my kid's good. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know if they're getting bullied, or you don't know if they're getting bullied and a friend hands them a gun. Like, you would be surprised if you happen to look in your kid's room today on what you find, or what their high school friend or school friend gave them just to hold, or what kind of drugs. You know, it's ridiculous on what juveniles are able to get in their hands nowadays. I appreciate the hard work, the rapid response on the brass knuckles, but hopefully it don't stop there, because there's also juveniles that have guns that shouldn't be having them, knives, anything. The bullying needs to stop, and it's just, it starts with parenting. Parenting, you know, more neighborhood communities where kids could just hang out and just, you know, have fun. One thing that I learned as far as with the police, and when I showed up to Mesa's city council meeting, they pulled me aside right away, making sure everything was okay, if they should have things to worry about. And it kind of, you know, opened my eyes, because good, they're scared. They know. You know, so for me to be able to tell the chief, admit to your mistakes. Admit to your mistakes. No one's perfect, but what I want, because they asked me, what do you need to change? You guys did what you guys need to do. You guys put my son's killer behind bars. But to take 3 attempts, for me to have to mourn, our family have to deal with the pain and constantly put our pain aside to call the courts, to call the police, to call the DA's office to know anything and get the runaround. And the only way I got my information I needed was through the news. The news would be able to give me a response in 20 minutes. It took me 3 or 4 days. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous for a mourning family, a hurting family, to not be able to deal with their pain, learn to deal with this new life they got to live without their loved one, to constantly have to keep in contact with the courts, with their police. We should be able to trust in you guys. So again, I thank you for doing what you're doing. You know, not everybody sees everything, but for you guys to make that amount of arrests in a short amount of time with very minimal mistakes, you guys are doing great. Hopefully Mesa's able to see that. And again, I appreciate it. If you guys could reach out, I am that person where if you know any kids, your guys' kids that need that big brother, that support, or I've already had to deal with that already. A good friend of mine has reached out to me. Their son or their grandson got suspended for bullying. He knew what type of parent it was, so he trusts that I was able to kind of lead him in the right direction. And that talk worked out great. He was able to, he's a loving kid. I told him out of this talk, he made a great friend. I gave him my number. I told that kid, if you ever feel that you're going to make a bad decision or just need somebody to talk to, you could call me at any time of the day. We just need that direction for our kids. You know, we never know what type of bad day they're going to have, and it just takes a second to make a decision that is going to ruin their lives. So again, I appreciate your guys' time. I appreciate you guys as well, and thank you for having me. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Rataj. I'm actually from Chandler, but very sorry for your loss, for everybody that's gotten there assaulted, killed. Chief, thanks for being here. This might be a solution. I kind of go with this guy, Bill. A long time ago in New York, when it was bad, real bad, the people stood up, the parents of these kids. Maybe it's the crap parents that should be held accountable, of course, but then maybe it's the really good parents that should come up with something like the East Valley Angels. But what if it's the East Valley Guardian Angels? What if it's parents patrolling around, maybe wearing orange, blue, whatever the color? You get 500, 2 hours a week. Start multiplying that in your heads. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe it's us. Thanks.
Thank you for all your comments and for working with us. Again, we're looking for solutions, and we heard some more tonight that we can work on. So.
All right. Well, first of all, I appreciate everything that everybody has said tonight. It takes a lot of courage to get up here and to tell your emotional stories and to talk about family and friends. I wanted to share a couple of observations. I don't want the police chief or the council to think that I'm trying to point fingers. These are just observations, and if they come across like I'm pointing fingers, that's not my intent. But firstly, in response to something that one of the previous speakers said in regards to the schools and their responsibility to provide social and emotional support for our kids. This is a hard pill to swallow, and I know that because I have 4 kids of my own that don't always make the best decisions. But the onus is on the parents and not on the schools. The schools are there to supplement support for students that are identified as needing additional support. But ultimately, the onus is on the parents, and that begins, I applaud this person who said that they started with their 4-year-old, teaching them internet security. It starts at home very early on, and it never stops. The onus never leaves the parents' purview. I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what this gentleman said about New York City. In the 80s, New York City was just an incredible... rampant with crime. And Mayor Giuliani, who I know has been in the news recently for some other things, but when he was mayor of New York City, he really cleaned up the city. Murders went down by 73%. Major crimes went down by 63%. And he did this by enacting a broken window policy and by focusing on lifestyle crimes, smaller crimes, because if criminals know that we don't tolerate smaller crimes, the likelihood that they're going to attempt larger crimes decreases. And the reason I bring that up, sorry, AZ family. If that falls again, it's not my fault. The reason I bring that up is, in addition to the policies that he enacted, The real reason that crime decreased so much between 1993 and 2000 with Mayor Giuliani is because over that 7-year period, he hired 12,000 police officers. The police officer presence jumped tremendously. In a simple Google search tonight, just sitting back there, I learned some things. And again, this is Google, which, you got to believe everything Google says, right? But in the year 2000, we had a population, Gilbert had a population of 117,000 people, and we had a police force of roughly 342 police officers, which breaks down to about 1 police officer for every 342 citizens of Gilbert. Today we have, or in 2022, we have almost 275,000 citizens, and we have just under 390, this again is according to Google, just under 390 police officers. Which if you do the math, if one police officer for every roughly 340 citizens, we should be closer to around 800 police officers. And so an observation that I think this subcommittee and eventually a task force could address is perhaps a need for more police officers. And again, I don't want to point fingers, but these are just observations. We have crime here in Gilbert, but when you go to the Gilbert Police's website, you see a lot of stuff about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know last year the police department spent upwards of $20,000 on diversity, equity, and inclusion training. I'll tell you one thing that Mayor Giuliani that cleaned up the streets, was worry about diversity, equity, and inclusion. He worried about cleaning up the streets. And so when we see things like a seemingly primary focus on the number of female versus male police officers, or black police officers versus white police officers, in my opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, I don't care what the demographics of our police force are. I just want crime to be handled here in Gilbert. And so when I see a focus on a website like that, it makes me wonder, what is our police department's focus? And so that's really all I wanted to say tonight. I, again, applaud everybody that's spoken tonight. I applaud you guys, law enforcement, for putting your lives on the line every single day. I'd love to see you get more support in the form of more police officers patrolling our streets. And again, thank you to the council for this opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Budget discussion that is for another day. Believe me.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Heather Kellis. I've been a Gilbert resident for the last 8 years. I moved here from the UK. I've been asking myself, what would I do if I was tasked with fixing the situation? And this is what I do. I work with teens every day. I understand this population deeply. I've worked with law enforcement, with tackling gangs in the UK. I've worked for municipalities here in the East Valley. I understand these kids, and I agree, this is a lack of community. That's the difference between Gilbert and Chandler. There is community, there's real community in Chandler. I don't see it here in Gilbert. In fact, I think the only time I felt any sense of any kind of community in Gilbert since I've moved here is right now with this Preston Lord thing. When you see people in Orange, you see them around, you feel that community. So I would just like to present to you, it's a 12-month East Valley project. There's a budget in there, there's a timeline. I have a little bit of my reading line.
You go, girl.
And really quick, because I wanted to say, because I want to acknowledge Lucian Carter Givens Holman Jr. He was a 16-year-old who was killed last month in Phoenix. So we need to say that name. We need to get that out there. But yeah, please.
See what you started, Chris.
I know. Chris made me do it. Hi, Leslie Kane. I had a few ideas, and was going to mention to you on the side, but I just decided to go ahead and go for it and put it out there because I know that you all really want solutions. And I'm here for it. So one thing that I wanted to share as a solution is trauma-informed training for our leadership. I think it's so important. And I know that, you know, in our leadership's own way, they're trying to get a grip, make sense, move things forward. However, I really would encourage you to look into trauma-informed training for leadership as just a really good starting point. A trauma-informed approach is more holistic, and instead of, a lot of times we look at things like what's going on right now, the teen violence and the behavior and the acting out and all that, and go, what is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these kids? What is wrong with you? What's wrong with you? But a trauma-informed approach asks the question, what has happened to you? And we all have something that's happened to us. As a community, we've all been traumatized, and something has happened to us, and it's impacting the reactions we see on social media, the interactions that we're having in these meetings, the interactions we're having online with our neighbors around what's going on and what has happened is impacting all of us. And depending on what we've been through previously, that will influence and inform the way that we're interacting today. So I think that that's something that we have to keep in mind as we path forward. And I think the trauma-informed training will help, and I'm happy to share some resources with you for that. Also, one other solution that I thought of as I was listening to other people speak is this is my 20th year in Gilbert, and I moved here from San Francisco. But I've lived in a lot of cities in the country and a lot of dangerous cities. Born and raised in St. Louis. I lived in Washington, D.C. for college. Hello, go Hoyas. And I also lived in L.A. In addition to San Francisco, I lived in Oakland. So I've kind of been around in that way. There's been a lot of growth. When we first got here, there wasn't a whole lot here. A lot of construction, a lot of homes, a lot of retail for days. I wish more companies would relocate here for like big jobs, better paying jobs for everyone. But one of the things that I thought of in terms of a path forward is for future development that maybe those resources or those entities be tapped as, hey, you want to build here maybe, then you can also, as part of your coming and building here, you can also contribute to, say, a community center or help bolster the community. In addition to building here and not just, you know, throwing up houses and throwing up retail, but actually fueling the community in a way that clearly is needed. Another solution, and I'm so not trying to be funny on this, but I was thinking about, someone was mentioning something about outlets for anger, and you know how we have a lot of entertainment centers and a lot of places like that. Some that are family friendly and some that are maybe more adult driven, like, you know, they've got the axe throwing and the, you know, but also there's, you know, family fun centers, golf, what have you. Like, what about something, I don't know, some kind of outlet for people who need kind of a release, but maybe like in a way that is not dangerous. Like, the thing that came to my mind was like maybe like a safe, moderated, like smash station, but maybe it's a smush station. Like maybe everything that's in it is like squishy and, you know, type thing, to where, you know, like the stress balls or things like that. But anyway, I know that sounds silly, but these were just things that were coming to my mind as I was listening to other people share. And I just really, I really feel for all of the parents who have lost children. I can't imagine. My son is almost 16, and I actually had him redo, like get his hair done so that he wouldn't resemble, there wouldn't be any kind of mistaken identity, like just as he comes and goes. And I don't know, just the fact that I felt that way. Like I feel for these parents, and I don't want people who are hurting to feel like there's something wrong with you, like something's happened to you and you are having a normal biological reaction to what has happened to you, whether it's your daughter or a dad who's hurting or a mom or a sister. And I really think that that's why I put that at the top, trauma-informed approach. And I think more people, more leaders need to understand how trauma works and how it affects the brain and the body. We can't get anything done without calm brains and bodies, and we cannot heal until we calm our brains and bodies. So again, I will be happy to share more resources with you. Thank you.
I think I need that trauma training now.
I'll go fast. I wasn't planning on.
Speak up real quick before you get to it.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, you want to stay there? I just wanted to bring up a couple points because thank you for everything you just said. So it's ironic though, because the previous speaker criticized the police department for having diversity, equity, inclusion training last year. The diversity, equity, inclusion training, which was not DE&I training, it was historical trauma. We put all of our police department employees through historical trauma. And how does that impact our jobs? The focus was not to treat someone differently because they may have a history of violence or tragedy. But when you have that subject and you're talking to whether it's be a victim, a witness, try to get to the root of the problem so that we don't see them again, unless it's on a positive side. So that was our focus of, we were criticized of being DE&I training. It had nothing to do with DE&I training. It was talking about how everybody has a past. Everyone has trauma. It may be significant, like we heard tonight. It may be financial. It may be some other type. But you learn from your parents, you learn from your friends. And that was the focus of our training last year. So I support moving forward. And that's what we did last year.
Before we start, any of you that were not the original 10 that signed a public comment card, please fill one out so we have a record of who spoke in the meeting.
Okay. So just a couple of things as I've spoke at previous town council meetings. As far as what we want as a community, as we've seen the community has really stepped up and helped a lot of these investigations. One thing I will say, and again, not to point fingers, but to be completely transparent, and you guys are taking the grunt of it as you are the subcommittee, so we can actually have these conversations. So please don't take anything personal, but again, as we want the youth to come forward and to feel safe, which right now we haven't created that safe space for the youth, especially with the amount of, there's so much going on in all of these investigations that is bigger than what can meet the public eye right now. We've seen the weapons, we've seen the drugs. So where are they getting the drugs and where are they getting the weapons? Number one thing, elephant in the room, being completely honest. So with that, at what point does leadership stand up and be accountable? We've seen so many cases closed, but going forward to solution, transparency and accountability. As far as action items that can start happening today, in all of these cases we've heard different comments. As far as me personally, a downtown resident of Gilbert, I know, and everybody knows in the community, that the youth hangs out at the top of the parking garages. Gilbert PD's sitting at the bottom, they're sitting at the railroad tracks, they're sitting all around Gilbert. As we know, the club scene down there as well and what Gilbert's turned into down there. As far as noise complaints, I live very close, I can hear that from my house. And so with that is, we also know that there's a lot of cameras. Everyone in the community knows that the kids go up there, they're vaping. They're taking pictures, selfies. There's drag racing going on up there. It's no secret in the community. Everybody knows, including the police. So that's not a secret. So something that can happen today would be cameras. We're depending on the youth to turn in their old friends, or if they were still in these groups. As we also know that they're in fear of retaliation with some of these networks and how big the ties go. So can we get the cameras working? Or the systems checked, whatever is going on with the cameras down there? As we know, there's tons of cameras down there. Another action item. As we heard about the schools and how it starts at home. Yes, it does, and those conversations do start at home, and bringing it back to home and having these conversations. But also being completely honest, speaking from experience based on my experience in previous schools in Chandler, as well as moving to Gilbert and what my daughter has faced at ALA. I've reported multiple things as far as the schools do need to join these conversations, and there's a lot of deflection from the town, the schools, of who needs to handle what. What about creating like a website where there can be a tip for the youth that will filter to the schools, where those resource officers can work with the law enforcement and the town, so it's all in one place. It would help you guys connect all your cases together, and a safe place for the youth. So that way everyone has an open forum between you guys all communicating, and the youth can still stay anonymous in that. Another solution, possibly, would be also with the schools, as a lot of these kids are student athletes and leaders on their campuses. We do know that we have a major problem with the drugs. So let's look at drug testing. With the schools, we do have to take, as my daughter is a student athlete, we do, as a parent and a student athlete, do have to take the opioid background through AIA and through CAA. You have to go through that training in order to even get cleared to play sports, as well as pass the school physical. These kids obviously have figured it out. They're using other P, they're using different ways to get around it. So, or they're using things like vapes, like Delta 8, or things that aren't showing up on the drug test. So, the only way to get the fentanyl and all that showing up on the drug test, can we look at something as far as a budget from the town, and even the school budgets, to do a synthetics drug test that will show the drug tests, or the drugs in the kids' systems. So those are just some things that I've been thinking about as I've heard in multiple conversations over the past week and talking to the youth, as I do a lot of advocacy in human trafficking and mental health. Trauma-informed approach is definitely key to all of this, as well as from a police department standpoint and even a town council, as this is brought up so much, and trauma, it can also trigger those individuals' own trauma or adverse childhood experiences. So with that, if an officer is showing where they might not be able to be functioning at their normal level of profession, let's just say that, is there a way to pull that officer or counsel out of their position and give them trauma-informed therapy and counseling services, and get them off the line of duty, to responding to first responder calls? But again, remember that the children are watching and the silence is deafening. I'll make this quick. I would like to partner, as well as helping connect the subcommittee and police departments and school districts, to nonprofits such as Red Light Rebellion, that is currently boots on the ground with the youth, as well as police officers currently, and creating the trauma-informed training and prevention programs, addressing physical, emotional, spiritual health, and the importance of digital safety and resilience. With this, we can get prevention programs implemented at the schools, community, with all government officials. Again, as we're told to wait for a thorough investigation, the children still go to the school feeling unsafe, unheard, unseen, and cannot be children. While they're wondering as life goes on, where's the justice, who's protecting us? As they live in survival mode and use coping mechanisms,
The children are in the communities every day and cross paths with the teens who continually get away with assaults and murder. It's more than a hashtag. It's a child's life. In this case, we see multiple assaults and multiple children that have been lost and innocent souls. To the youth, those that have reported prior that were silenced, please know you are courageous. I'm sorry for everything you've endured, but I pray that, again, that you will stand up and speak your truth and be an upstander. Praying for healing, strength, and protection as God continues to bring these stories to light. Please know that we are here for you, and you are enough. Your voices matter. We see you, we hear you, and we stand by you. We love you. Be an upstander and continue to keep the Lord, the Jenkins, the Stevens, the Avelis family, and the Jacoba family, and all those that have been assaulted, and all the youth in your prayers. We have no future if we don't protect the children. We have a duty to protect the innocent. If not, that blood is on our hands. And if we can just take a moment of silence for all of the youth that's been assaulted, as well as all of the Preston Lord and all of the others that have been murdered due to teen violence. Thank you.
If I may.
Yes, for a couple of minutes.
Thank you. Anna Van Hook, as mentioned, Higley Unified, but I'm here as a parent. I want everybody to know most schools should have an anonymous tip line for things to be reported. I know our district does. So if parents can let their kids know that if they have any concerns or anything to report, that is available to them. Also, in reference to the brass knuckle bill, my concern is anything can be used as a weapon. Do we ban every single item that could potentially be used as a weapon? Where do we draw the line? I think it's I think it's already illegal for minors to have brass knuckles. It's under the age of 21, it's considered a deadly weapon. And just like a gun, I'm pretty sure it's already illegal. But only if they, yeah. So again, at what point, where do we draw the line? Do we just keep banning things that could be used as a weapon? I mean, I don't agree that minors should have any weapons, but they're very easy to get, swap meets, Goodwill, and so it's just tough to know where to draw the line on things that could potentially be used as weapons. I also want to encourage parents to show up to their children's events. It's really sad to go to performances and school events and have these kids, first thing they do walk out is look in the audience for their parents. And the disappointment in their eyes when they don't see their parents is heartbreaking. So just like to encourage parents to get more involved and be there for their kids. Social media has destroyed this generation. It's all about videotaping and the likes that they get on social media instead of stepping in and trying to protect their friends who are potentially being beat up. And yes, many will say, don't get involved, but even as an adult, I've seen fights and I've gotten involved and stepped in, and at that moment, I don't care if I get hit, but at least I could potentially help save somebody's life. And it shouldn't be about how many likes you get on social media. The push for mental health on every child and the social emotional aspect of that being pushed on every child is concerning to me. Yes, I know that there's a lot that happens, but we can't treat every child like they have a mental health condition, or that every child needs social emotional support. So teaching these things as a blanket to every child, I think if you tell a child that they have mental health conditions enough, that they might start believing it. So we need to be very careful about that, and being able to offer resources to parents instead of just making sure that every kid is covered in the process. And also pushing that onto the schools. I want the schools involved as a community. I want all of us to be able to come together, but forcing this onto the schools, I think, is there's just so much that has to happen at school when it comes to academics. We have kids that are failing math and reading and English, and it's just to add one more thing that teachers have to do, that districts have to do, is a lot. Where we provide a service, and that's academics, and that's where we need to be able to concentrate on. And also less restorative justice practices and more harsher punishments. Because I know of a 14-year-old girl in Scottsdale who was beat up 3 days in a row, and her abusers were arrested and sent to social justice classes. They didn't learn their lesson. They don't learn lessons when you put them in a class. There has to be harsher punishments. Meanwhile, this little girl is, attempted suicide and ended up, she'll have a lifetime of trauma. And also, 14% of kids in Gilbert are in sports. I think if we paid more attention as far as getting more kids involved in sports, that will keep them out of trouble, and also improve their mental health. And maybe if that's a money issue of why parents aren't getting their kids involved in sports, then maybe there could be some sort of grants offered or anything through community businesses that could help with funding those kids to be able to be in sports. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
We do need to wrap up. We reserved this room till 8 o'clock, and I think it's after 8 o'clock, so do we want to set a time and place for our next meeting? In 2 weeks, like we did before, 2 weeks? Is this a good location for people?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we'll make sure we have it, and we'll come back here in 2 weeks' time. We'll just look for the postings of the announcement when that comes out. Anything else?
I want to thank everyone for the solutions that he gave them. It was great, and those who I asked to stick around for a second, please do.
Please fill out a comment card. If you didn't fill it out, it was raised on 10, so it's on the record as we did speak.
Talking to anybody before you